Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the second of two information sessions for the Connect SoCal Sustainable Communities Program Call for Application for Civic Engagement, Equity, and Environmental Justice. My name is Anita Au, and I'm a program manager with SCAG. I will be co-facilitating today's meeting along with my colleague, Lindsay Nolan. If you haven't already, we'd like to encourage you to type your name and organization into the chat feature. This will help us know who's in the room, and it will help us ensure that this feature is functioning for you. SCAG is providing closed captioning for this session. If you would like to activate or hide that feature, click on the live transcript button along the bottom menu and choose Show Subtitle or Hide Subtitle. SCAG is also providing simultaneous translation services in Spanish during this information session. Thank you so much, Alberto and Jeanette, for joining us today. All participants must select a channel by clicking on the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen and select either English or Spanish. And also, if you don't want to hear the English version of this presentation, please be sure to mute the original audio too, so you can only hear the Spanish translation. And now I will turn it over to my colleague, Lindsay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Now for some meeting logistics. This meeting will last about an hour and a half. All mics are muted upon entering and during the first portion of this meeting. So please take care to keep your mic muted when you're not speaking during the Q&A portion. If you have a question at any point during the session, please type it in the chat box. We'll also have a Q&A session after the presentation, as I mentioned before. And of course, if you think of anything later, you can always reach out to our team member, Hannah Brucknell, directly. Her email is on the slide, and it'll be sent out along with this presentation to those who registered to participate in today's meeting. Before we get into our session, I'd like to offer a land acknowledgement. We are currently on occupied and unceded land of Indigenous peoples who are and have been the traditional caretakers of the land in this region. I'm calling in from Chumash, Keech, Tongva, and Gabrielino land. If you haven't already, I encourage you to visit native-land.ca to learn more about the traditional inhabitants of the land you live on and work in. Okay. Oops, here we go. Okay. So we're going to, throughout this presentation, have a few check-in polls throughout. So this first one is a simple audience demographic about where you're located and what type of organization you represent. So let's go ahead and start launching the poll. I believe we might be launching in Spanish and English. So this first one is in English. Go ahead and pick for the first question, which county are you seeking funding in? And our second question is, what type of organization do you represent? We'll give it a few more seconds. We have about 46% participation. Why don't we go ahead and end the poll now and share results. So it looks like we have a lot of folks from LA and Orange today, as well as Riverside, San Bernardino, and Ventura. No one from Imperial. All right. And then in terms of organizations, we have a number of local or regional agencies, cities, a few CBOs, and a housing authority. Let's stop and share the Spanish in case we have any Spanish speakers today. All right. Our first question again is, which county are you seeking funding in? And which type of organization do you represent? So I'm not seeing any activity in the Spanish poll. Let's go ahead and close it and move on to the next slide. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating. Okay, so for today's agenda, this information session will start with an overview of the Sustainable Communities Program, then review the goals and objectives of, for this call for applications, followed by applicant and project eligibility. After that, we'll get into the structure, process, and partnership opportunities, and finally, the proposed scoring criteria and timeline. And then at the end, we'll wrap up again with a discussion and Q&A session. All right, our session outcomes. By the end of this session, we hope participants will, one, have a clearer understanding of our updated guidelines. They're still in draft form and you can still submit comment until this Friday. Two, understand project eligibility and partnership structure considerations. Three, understand opportunities to provide feedback on the guidelines. Again, that's the opportunity is open till Friday, and you would submit to Hannah Brunel, which will be shared when our slides are shared. And then four, we hope that you're going to feel more prepared to start identifying projects and potential co-applicants. All right, next slide, Jamboard. Okay, so we'd love to take the opportunity of being convened together in this space with you all to get to know who's here, what types of projects you're interested in pursuing through this call for applications, and what relationships or connections might help you achieve your goals. I'm going to share my screen real quick so you can see what I'm talking about. So here we have our Jamboard. Apologies if it's a little blocked by some other things, but over here we have a little sticky note icon. You can click that and enter a little note. So that's how you do that. I'm going to stop sharing. Here we go. And if you could bring the slide back up, there we go. Can you please go back to the Jamboard instructions? I'm just going to read through the whole thing. So as we go through the presentation and you learn more about this opportunity, I invite you to introduce yourselves in the Jamboard linked in the chat and shown on screen. If you've attended a previous session, this might look familiar to you, and so we invite you to participate again. So again, as long as you're comfortable with it, please share your name, email address, organization or jurisdiction, which county you're in, what project type you might be interested in, and the type of partnership that you're looking for. We'd love to support connections and partnership building before the call opens between you and other folks working in similar regions on similar projects, or even people who can be potential partners in this call for applications. So to that end, this information may be shared with others, so please only add to the Jamboard if you're comfortable with your contact information being shared. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Anita.
Thank you, Lindsay. So now I will provide an overview of SCAG's Sustainable Communities Program and more specifically, this call for applications. Since 2005, SCAG Sustainable Communities Program, or SCP, we call it for short, has supported jurisdictions' local planning efforts and enabled implementation of the Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Communities Strategy, or SCAG's Long Range Plan, which today we call Connect SoCal. The 2020 Connect SoCal Sustainable Communities Program has developed 3 calls for applications, each with different planning priorities. This 4th SCP call for applications is focused on civic engagement, equity, and environmental justice, or CEEEJ. It is intended to be an implementation tool to further SCAG's adopted Racial Equity Early Action Plan. And SCAG anticipates the program to open early next year. SCAG posted draft guidelines for public comment for this call on October 25th, 2022, sorry. SCAG will continue to accept feedback through this Friday, November 18th at 5 p.m. So all written comments should be sent as an email or attachment to an email to Hannah Brunel, Senior Regional Planner at brunel@scag.ca.gov. And her contact information is also available in the earlier slides. So for this specific call for applications, the goal is to support the development of plans to close the racial equity gap outlined in SCAG's Racial Equity Baseline Conditions Report. We also want to support a range of eligible land use and transportation planning activities, as well as housing supportive infrastructure projects. We also want to advance the goals in SCAG's Racial Equity Early Action Plan by prioritizing efforts that directly benefit communities of concern and SB 535 disadvantaged communities by encouraging racial equity in local planning practices. And lastly, to support and encourage equitable partnerships between community-based organizations and local agencies. So this call for applications includes multiple funding sources. The Regional Early Action Planning Grants of 2021, or as we call short, REAP 2.0, and Senate Bill 1, or SB 1 funds. As such, all projects must address at least one of the following funding objectives: affirmatively furthering fair housing, AFFH, which means taking meaningful actions that, taken together, address significant disparities in housing needs and in access to opportunity, replacing segregated living patterns with truly integrated and balanced living patterns, transforming racially and ethnically concentrated areas of poverty into areas of opportunity, and fostering and maintaining compliance with civic rights and fair housing laws. Another funding objective is accelerating infill housing development that promotes housing choice and affordability. And we will cover an infill definition in more detail later in this presentation. And then the other objectives are also to reduce vehicle miles traveled, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and support implementation of Connect SoCal. So as we mentioned, one of the call for goals is to support a range of eligible land use and transportation planning activities, as well as housing supportive infrastructure projects. We've organized these into 2 broad project categories, although applicants may propose projects that fall under both. In addition, the examples listed under each category are examples and not exhaustive. So under the housing and land use strategies, some examples include affordable housing plans and ordinances, infrastructure and utility financing plans, but not including fossil fuel and natural gas, integrating infill housing into general plan updates, and integrating environmental justice goals and or policies into general plan updates. And under the multimodal communities category, some examples include community e-bike rebates and e-bike share plans and pilots, highways to boulevards and freeway gap plans, or improvements for non-motorized vehicles and pedestrian traffic, multimodal corridor studies alongside planning or implementation actions, park and greenway connectivity plans, transportation accessibility and safety demonstration projects, and Vision Zero policy and programs or transportation safety plans. But we do want to note that no matter what type of project you choose, we want to emphasize that robust, inclusive, and equitable community engagement strategies are a requirement on all projects and should be integrated into your project scopes. So to help determine project eligibility, we designed a simple survey to support applicants, and we will share more about this survey later in the presentation. So before we dive into this infill definition, we have a few caveats. So the first is that this definition is not finalized. SCAG is working with the state to develop a more broad and inclusive definition that is more relevant to our region. And second, this definition is relevant for projects that are focused on housing and land use strategies, since this call includes additional non-REAP funding sources. So for projects that are focused on addressing the objective of accelerating infill housing, SCAG's proposed definition of infill, building from the state's current definition for infill, is unused or underutilized land within existing development patterns accessible to daily services via transit, walking, bike, and located in either a community or neighborhood center, corridor within existing development patterns, or an area with transit supportive densities, or an established community that meets all of the following, including the area consists or previously consisted of qualified urban areas and is predominantly surrounded by parcels that are developed or previously developed with qualified urban areas, and no parcel within or adjoining the area is classified as agricultural or natural and working lands. This is a huge mouthful, and it's very complicated, but we are here to help you understand this definition. The state's definition of infill is included in Appendix 1 of our draft program guidelines, which are linked in the chat. And the eligibility screening survey, which, as we mentioned in the last slide, is the first step of the application, where we will ask you whether your project is in an infill area. And because this definition is broad and could take some time for you to digest, we are here to support you and to help you determine whether your project area is within this infill area. Please reach out to Hannah Brunel. If you have any questions, we are here to help. So after all this information, we want to go on to our, and here is the Spanish translation of the previous slide with all the definitions. So I'm going to pause here a little bit, but we are going to have another check-in poll where we're going to ask you about this infill definition. So again, these slides will be available to you as well. So if you want to spend some time on the Spanish translation slide, please feel free to do so. But we will be moving on to the check-in, or another check-in question. So the first question is, do you see your community fitting into the definition of infill? There's yes, no, the definition is still unclear to me, or it's not really applicable at the moment. And then we also have another question. is it clear that you can still apply even if your project is not in an infill area? So we want to specifically say, for those who answer no to the second question, you may submit an application even if your project is not in an infill area. We have 2 funding sources for this program, which allows us to support competitive projects that don't meet this infill definition. So I actually gave you the answer for the second poll, but we want to make sure that you understand that you can still apply if your project is not located in this infill within this infill definition. All right, so it looks like we have about 26% participation in the poll, but we are seeing more people are answering, so I'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, and I think maybe I think it's getting a few more responses, so that's great. Thank you so much. So we are at 44%. So I'm just going to end the poll and share the results. So it looks like, great, we have 40% of you saying that your community fits within the infill definition. And there are still some confusion with the definition, which we totally understand, and we're here to make sure it's clear to you. This is when you can sign up for one-on-one discussions with us. And then if it's not applicable, that's about 33% of you, again, still able to apply, even if you are not in the infill definition. So 80% of you answered this correctly. And the 20% that said no, again, you are still able to apply. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to hand it over to Lindsay.
Do we want to launch the Spanish poll?
Oh,
or
yes. Sorry about that. Can we launch the Spanish poll to see if anyone would like to respond in Spanish? Give it like maybe 15 seconds. I am not seeing any responses, so I think that's okay. We will end the poll. But thank you so much. And now I will hand it off to Lindsay.
Great. Thank you, Anita. Okay, so SCAG has prioritized funding in areas that have been traditionally disadvantaged, underserved, underrepresented, and under-resourced for this call for applications. So this includes SB 535 disadvantaged communities, which includes state and federally recognized tribal lands in the latest update. The TCAC, TCAC, HCID opportunity areas, those are the Tax Credit Allocation Committee / Housing and Community Development Opportunities areas. The SCAG Communities of Concern and AB 1550 communities. We are in the process of developing a map that will show where these priority populations are located. And this will be included in the program application once we release it early next year. In terms of applicant eligibility, historically, the SCP funding and technical assistance has only been accessible to jurisdictions and agency applicants. For this call for applications, we are including a new approach by utilizing a co-applicant structure that's aimed at facilitating greater connection and collaboration between agencies and jurisdictions and community-based partners. As we mentioned earlier, a big goal for this program is to encourage equitable partnerships between community-based organizations or CBOs / nonprofits and local agencies. We'll get more into the co-applicant structure more in the next slide, but just to give you a heads up about that. As you can see, we have multiple colors up on screen. So some entities for this program are eligible as primary applicants, some are eligible as co-applicants, and some are eligible as both, depending on the funding source. So the entities in white are eligible as primary applicants for all of our funding sources, whereas all primary applicants, those in white and green, are also eligible as co-applicants. So I'm going to repeat that again. The ones in white are eligible as primary applicants for all funding sources, and all primary applicants, so those in white and green, can also apply as co-applicants. So they can be either or. Entities in green are eligible as primary applicants for REAP 2 funds only. SCAG is going to be working with applicants to determine the right funding source. So you'll be working with us on that. The entities in pink are eligible as co-applicants only and need to be either a registered 501c3 or have a fiscal sponsor. Up to 2 co-applicants may apply alongside a primary applicant. And the eligibility screening survey, which, as we mentioned in previous slides, is the first step of the application, and that will help you determine eligibility as primary or co-applicant. All right, next slide. As I said, co-applicant partnership structure. So this call for applications allows primary applicants to apply via partnership with up to 2 co-applicants. Under this primary and co-applicant partnerships, co-applicants would be compensated to lead key parts of the project. And then we would also have, SCAG would procure a consultant team that would help perform the identified work on behalf of the primary and co-applicant partnership. If you already have a partnership in mind, please do mention that in your as part of your Jamboard entry that we mentioned earlier. Now, proposed scoring criteria. So there are currently 4 areas for our proposed scoring criteria, which include 1, project need and benefit to priority populations, 2, project design and outcomes, 3, local partnerships, and 4, inclusive and equitable engagement. And then we also want to clarify that while 1 application is recommended, applicants may submit multiple applications. And I'll pass back to Anita.
Thank you, Lindsay. So this call for application will open early next year. To give you an idea of the application process, please look at the slide before you. So step 1 is to fill out the eligibility screening survey. If you have a partnership in place, the primary applicant should fill this out in coordination with co-applicants. The survey is only a few questions long and will really help you determine project and applicant eligibility. So step 2 is for co-applicants to fill out the self-certification checklist. And this checklist will help SCAG identify if there are any areas where co-applicants need support or may not meet eligibility requirements to enter into an MOU with SCAG. And step 3 is to complete and submit the full application. Finally, SCAG will evaluate submitted proposals and recommend awards. So we are in the process of holding one-on-one meetings with CBOs and local agencies to spread the word about this opportunity and listen to project ideas. So if you are interested, or even if you have any questions about the entire process, about the infill definition and whatnot, please feel free to schedule a one-on-one meeting with us to discuss. Early next year, we will be seeking approval from SCAG's Regional Council to open the call and to provide further guidance on the application process. So in spring of 2023, we expect applications to be developed and submitted and application evaluation to occur. We anticipate the projects to be recommended and awarded by next spring or summer of 2023. So now we have our final check-in poll to see how you're all feeling about applying to this program. So Jennifer, if you could launch the poll, please. So the first question is, how likely are you to initiate an application in early 2023? And then question number 2 is, if you're inclined to submit a proposal, what will you submit the proposal for? And this is multiple choice, but more than one answer is okay. Great, seeing a lot of action in this poll right now, so that's fantastic. We have about 38%, now 44% participating in this poll. So I think we're about like the 50% area of participation for previous polls. So I'm going to wait maybe a few more seconds to see if there's any additional straggling responses, but we are holding steady at 47%. Okay, I'm going to end the poll and share our results. So it looks like quite a few, half of the responses are just learning about this opportunity, and you need some time to get to know this call, while about 38% you're talking to your organization about submitting an application. A good 6% will be submitting an application, and 6 don't think you will be submitting an application. So that is fine. Again, if you have any further questions, please sign up for our one-on-one sessions. And then for question number 2, we're getting a good mix of housing and land use strategies at 38% and 25% of a mix. Again, we also have some people that are not sure. That is totally fine. The eligibility survey will help you answer some of these questions. So thank you so much. Jennifer, if possible, can you share the Spanish poll just to see if we got any stragglers that want to respond in the Spanish poll? Again, I'm going to give it about 10 seconds to see if there's anyone that wants to provide their input. Otherwise, we will close this poll. Great. Thank you so much. And so now we have some time for questions like the ones on the screen, or others that you may have. Feel free to raise your hand or type any questions into the chat. But we are curious to know, do you have any partnerships in mind? How can SCAG support you? Any anticipated challenges or opportunities with this call? Or do you have any additional questions? So as a reminder, please speak slowly so our interpreters can capture your questions and comments.
And Anita, we do have one question in the chat. Do you want me to read it out loud?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So would an application be marked down if a city as lead agency does not have a co-applicant, but has a CBO that participates as an agency that supports and helps implement the project?
So thank you, Jack, for this question. If you have a CBO that is participating in the project but not applying as a co-applicant, is that your question?
Yes, it is.
Great. So we do highly encourage you to apply with a co-applicant with the CBO. So maybe this would warrant additional discussions with you on a one-on-one session, but would it be possible to have the CBO as a co-applicant with you as part of the application?
It could be, possibly, but why I'm asking the question is because it would represent additional layer of work for the city to engage the CBO, work out roles and responsibilities, because they're going to be entering into an MOU with SCAG. And there was a previous slide that says the CBO will be compensated via this memorandum. So is there monetary payments for staff time for the CBO versus that of the city? I'm assuming the city doesn't get anything. This is a technical grant application. But if there's a CBO that's a co-applicant, then the CBO would be eligible for compensation, but not the lead agency. Is that correct?
Hannah or Julia, do you think you can respond to that, please?
Hi there, this is Hannah. Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that. Thanks for the question, Jack. So just to reiterate, SCAG will enter into an MOU with the co-applicant as well as with the primary applicant. As both parties on the MOU, SCAG will pay the co-applicant directly as they'll be completing a specific portion of the scope of work. We will not be paying for city staff time. So that's correct. But we will be paying for a CBO co-applicant to work on the project. And also for your first question, we do as part of the application, the scoring criteria is designed to provide more points if your application does have a co-applicant. Although there is a specific section where we are evaluating engagement and inclusive and equitable engagement. So as you're mentioning, you have partners that you're working with, you will receive points there, but it might lose points if you don't have a co-applicant as part of your application structure.
I see. Yeah, it adds another layer of consideration because the CBO would be performing certain tasks that would have to be exclusive of what the consultant is going to be doing that's brought on by SCAG. And while we're developing the project application, we'd have to kind of take into account all of those additional factors. It may be a little bit difficult to do.
Yeah, no, I understand your concern. So, when you do submit your application, we will be asking for a scope of work. And, that's where, the primary applicant and the co-applicant, you can outline, what sorts of work the co-applicant will do. So hopefully that process, can occur, as you're filling out the application, and then SCAG will, work with each applicant to develop the MOU and also support you with outlining those roles and responsibilities in the MOU.
Thank you very much. Got it.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you, Hannah. We also have another question about the types of activities eligible for this funding opportunity. So I'm actually going to go back a few slides so then we can get this on the page here. Okay, so so for the housing and land use category, we have quite a few that are, again, these are examples. So it definitely is not exhaustive, That can include, so housing and land use strategies can include affordable housing plans and ordinances, infrastructure and utility financing plans, but that does not include fossil fuel and natural gas, integrating infill housing within general plan updates, and integrating environmental justice goals or policies into general plan updates. And for multimodal communities, some examples can include community e-bike rebates and e-bike share plans and pilots, highways to boulevards and freeway gap plans, or improvements for non-motorized vehicles and pedestrian traffic. But motorized vehicle infrastructure improvements are not eligible. Multimodal corridor studies alongside planning or implementation actions, park and greenway connectivity plans, transportation accessibility and safety demonstration projects, and Vision Zero policy and programs or transportation safety plans. So again, we're trying to make this very broad for eligible project types. If you have any further questions, again, we can share this presentation with you as well as answer any questions. Please feel free to email Hannah Brunel or sign up for one of our one-on-one sessions to learn more about the project eligibility. Thank you for that question, Margarita. Does anyone else have any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand or type it into the chat. All right, I am not seeing anything else, so I'm going to slowly navigate the slides back to where we stopped and see if there's anyone else that has anything else that they'd like to share. Hi, Jack.
Just a quick question. I'm sure it's in the guidelines, but is there a maximum amount of the grant? And is this only for planning documents or is it also eligible for brick and mortar construction?
So to answer your second question, this is only for planning documents. We can't do implementation implementation projects, but and then to answer your first question, we don't have a maximum amount, but we are anticipating projects to be within the range of 250,000 to 500,000. Margarita?
Hi, thank you so much for this this briefing on this opportunity. I have two questions. Do you have a sense of how many grants you plan on issuing during this round? That's my first question. And the second question was around within the co-partnership structure with the co-applicant and the primary applicant, what is the thought regarding the decision-making process among those teams, knowing that, you know, SCEEEJ will be working directly with the co-applicant to kind of link the whole process. So I just wanted to get some more insight on the shared decision-making process, if there's any like further details about that.
Okay, I can respond to your first question, and then maybe Hannah or Julia can respond to your second question. So for your first question, we don't have like a maximum amount of projects that we anticipate funding. We do have that range, the 250 to 500,000 for each project, and we have an anticipated amount of 5 million for this call. So but we don't have like the actual number of how many projects we are actually going to fund. It would depend on the each of the projects that are coming in, but just for you for your information, we have about 500 million, or sorry, we have about 5 million. I wish we had 500 million. And then the ranges for the projects are around 250K to 500K. And then Hannah, Hannah or Julia, do you think you can respond to Margarita's co-applicant structure question?
Hi, this is Hannah. I'm wondering, Margarita, would you mind just repeating your second question?
Oh, hi, Hannah. Thank you. Yes, I was just wondering if there was any insight from the SCAG team on the shared or the decision-making process that would take place between the primary applicant and the co-applicant in terms of agreements, maybe some of the action steps that would help clarify that relationship between both and even SCAG's role with that.
Yes, that's a great question. So that's certainly something that we've thought of in terms of, developing this co-applicant structure. One of the pieces in the program application, we're looking for applicants to describe, how that decision-making structure will look. Is this a reciprocal and equitable relationship between the primary applicant and the co-applicant? So that's part of what we're looking for in your application to evaluate. And it's certainly something that, we can kind of talk with you on sort of, I think it could depend on, what the partnership looks like, how many partners you have, if you have one or two partners. But certainly that's something that we're looking to see in the application. And in terms of the MOU, we're really looking to clearly outline what the roles and responsibilities are of each party so that, everyone is very clear on, what type of work they're responsible for, what the milestone payment structure looks like. So all of that will be included in the MOU with SCAG. And your responses on the application will help inform the development of the MOU. I hope that answered your question, but happy to share any more information.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah and Margarita, for the question. We have another question in the chat from Marilyn. How is the proposed scoring criteria categories weighted? Yes, it is out of 100, and the scores are actually proposed in the draft guidelines, which I will actually put into the chat right now. So there are four sections or 4 areas that we're giving scores on. So for the project need and priority population benefits, that would comprise of 20 points within the 100. The project design and outcomes, that is 25. Local partnerships is also 25, and inclusive and equitable engagement, which, as we mentioned, it should be a major component within all projects, no matter what category you are applying for, and that is about 30%, or not. It is about 30%, 30 points out of 100. So again, it is in the draft guidelines. So we have some further breakdown, different other categories within the scoring criteria if you wanted to take a look at that. Great. Thank you so much, Marilyn, for your question. Do we have any other questions? If not, again, if you have any questions, even after the session, please email Hannah or schedule a one-on-one session with us, and we'd be more than happy to respond to any questions that you might have. So again, just a friendly reminder to look at the Jamboard that we have here. So we want to, well, first of all, I want to thank you all for your thoughtful questions, and it was really great to hear from everyone. Now that we've gone through the structure of this call for applications, please, I'd like to remind you to add to the Jamboard with your information and your ideas. And thank you so much for those who have already added themselves in. This Jamboard will remain open for the next couple of weeks. If you'd like to add to it or refer back to it, we will also send it out as a resource in your recap email after the second session concludes. And without further ado, want to thank you so much for participating in today's information session to learn more about the upcoming Connect SoCal Sustainable Communities Program call for applications. A big thank you to our AV support, Jennifer, and our interpreters, Albert and Janet, for your help for the session. As we mentioned at the outset, this presentation will be posted on SCAG's website and emailed to all registered participants. If you have any questions or follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to our staff. Our contact information, or our contact will be provided in the post session email as well. So again, thank you so much, everyone, and we hope that you stay safe and healthy. Just looking to see there's another question on the slides. So yes, they will be available. Again, thank you so much, everyone. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.